everyone, it is Emily here, and it is time for my monthly recommendations video. Monthly Recommendations is a Goodreads group hosted by Kayla, Wayne, and Trina from Between Chapters, and every month there is a topic, and we all make videos or write blog posts about books relating to that topic and what we recommend in that genre. And this month we are talking about retellings. So I really enjoy a good retellings. I was really excited about this topic. I had a whole list of retellings I've been wanting to read lately that I talked about in my On My Radar video, and I had been hoping I would have more of them read by now, but I have not. So if you want more ideas, go ahead and check that video out. I will link it up somewhere in the cards up here for you. This year with my monthly recommendations videos, I've been trying to talk about books which I feel like are underhyped, and so there are some books I recommend, obviously like The Lunar Chronicles by Marissa Meyer. If you like retellings, you need to read The Lunar Chronicles, or the A Court of Thorns and Roses trilogy by Sarah J. Maas. Those books are obvious to me, and so definitely go check those out, but here are some other ones that I also highly recommend. So first off, I have a couple recommendations for people who might not like fantasy, but they might enjoy a retelling. The first one is The Steep and Thorny Way by Kat Winters. This is a reimagining of Hamlet, but it takes place in the 1920s, and it features a girl who is of mixed race, and she basically is playing the Hamlet role. And it is really, really interesting. It's young adult, and it's very much kind of like a story of like revenge, but it also deals a lot of racial issues. It deals with a lot of sexuality issues and a lot of those kinds of things, and it's very, very interesting. It definitely has a slight paranormal aspect to it because of the nature of Hamlet, where there's like a ghost and such, but it is mostly a historical fiction story. And then there is also The Summer of Chasing Mermaids, and this is a young adult contemporary, and it is a reimagining of The Little Mermaid. This is about a girl who is from Haiti, I want to say, and she used to be a singer, but she has lost her voice after a traumatic incident, and now she has moved to the States with her aunt, and she ends up falling for the playboy of the town, and she is helping him get his boat ready for a competition, and I definitely would say it's more inspired by The Little Mermaid versus a true retelling, but you definitely can see the different Little Mermaid aspects of this book, and it's kind of a fun summer lighthearted read, but it does have some a few deeper moments, and there's actually a really cool storyline that I liked, which kind of dealt with gender roles, and I really, really like that. Along the same lines of not necessarily fantasy, but if you like more Christian or biblical stories, I definitely recommend books by Francine Rivers. A lot of people are familiar with her book Redeeming Love, but she also has two sets of novellas, and one of them is A Lineage of Grace. This is a bind-up of all 5 of the novellas, and this follows the 5 women the Bible mentions who are in the lineage of Jesus. And so it follows the stories of Tamar, Rahab, Ruth, Bathsheba, and Mary, and they're just short novellas that go into their stories and put them in novel form. And then she has a similar set of novellas called The Sons of Encouragement, and they are kind of like the sidekicks of other biblical heroes. So this one is The Prince, who is about Prince Jonathan versus King David. There's another one that's about Aaron versus Moses, etc. And I thought that they were really interesting, and since they're novellas, they're really short reads. And this isn't necessarily a Christian perspective or a biblical perspective, but it is a reimagining of a biblical story, and that is The Red Tent. And this is more for an adult audience, and this is the story of Dinah, and she actually was the sister of Joseph and his 11 brothers, so Jacob and Sons, which, guys, you have no idea how hard it was for me to not boast into song singing Jacob and Sons, because I've been in that show 3 times, and yeah, I was in it 3 times. Basically, the colors of Joseph's coat will never ever not be in my head. But because Dinah was not in the musical, no one really talks about her, and so this book is from her perspective and also from the perspective of the other women in the story of Jacob marrying Rachel and Leah and all of the others. And all of their perspectives on this story. So it's not necessarily a... If you like books that are more biblically accurate and want to stick with exactly what the Bible says, then this might not be for you. But if you really like good historical novels with a different twist on a story that a lot of people know, you might really like The Red Tent. And then for some other more traditional fantasy retellings, there is Winter Song by S.J. Jones. This book actually came out earlier this year, and I am a fan of S.J. Jones, or J.J. She actually has been working in publishing for a very long time, and she is one of the hosts for the podcast Publishing Crawl, which I'm obsessed with, and she kind of talks about her journey to publishing this book throughout the podcast. So I was really excited for this one to come out, and this is actually a retelling of Labyrinth. And I believe there's also inspiration of Amadeus. And it was really interesting, and she is working on the sequel to it, and I thought it was really good. I would argue this is more of a new adult book, but it is being marketed as young adult, and so there are a couple more adult-ish themes to it. And this isn't the type of fantasy where it's a lot of action-packed adventure stuff, but it is a fantasy for sure, and it's about this girl, Liesel, and she goes to rescue her sister from the Goblin King, and in fact marries the Goblin King herself. And it's definitely a cool, interesting twist, although I haven't watched Labyrinth, so I can't really compare the two, but I did enjoy this book. Then there is Stolen Songbird, and this is the first, I believe, in a trilogy. And I haven't read the final book yet, but I do have it on my iPad, and I intend to read it. And this is a retelling of Beauty and the Beast, but with trolls. So it's kind of cool, and I enjoyed it. I think it's a really fun retelling and a cool story. And I actually really need to read the last book of it and find out what happens, because I don't know why I've been putting it off, because I really need to read it. And then there is Warm Bodies, and I would say this is this is not an exact retelling or reimagining, but I definitely would say there are some Romeo and Juliet inspired aspects to Warm Bodies, because the characters are and Julie, Romeo, Juliet, and they're from opposite sides. She's a human, he's a zombie, and so I also just really like having excuses to talk about Warm Bodies, because I freaking love this book. But then, I thought I had read so many more retellings than I had, but I realized there are a ton of retellings that no one talks about, and I kind of forget sometimes that I've read them. So there is this series called the Once Upon a Time series, and they came out when I was in high school, kind of early college, and I devoured these. And there's actually a couple of these that I just automatically bought, but I hadn't actually read yet. And they are just these super short books that are retellings of fairy tales and classic stories and myths. Jack and the Beanstalk, Anastasia, Cinderella, The White Bride and the Black Bride, Mulan, Rumpelstiltskin, Sleeping Beauty, Snow White, The 12 Dancing Princesses, The Little Mermaid, Rapunzel, The Frog Prince, Little Red Riding Hood. I want to say this is Beauty and the Beast, but don't quote me on that. Arabian Nights, The Snow Queen, The Princess and the Pea, and The Magic Flute. I adored these books in high school, and you don't have to read them in any particular order. Each one completely stands alone. They're their own characters, their own worlds. Some are more historical, some are more fantasy, and I just really, really like them. And there's also a new release called The Reluctant Hood, and this is an urban fantasy retelling of Red Riding Hood that just came out a week or so ago, and I'm kind of outrageously excited to read it. So there you go. Those are my monthly recommendations for retellings. I hope you pick some of them up, and now I'm just super excited to go and read some more retellings because I really love them. I think it's really fun to get new perspectives and ideas on classic stories. So let me know if you've read any of these books, if you maybe remember this Once Upon a Time series that I'm obsessed with, and if you have any recommendations for me. And I will see you all later. Bye!